All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today, we've gone a little mobile. We're going to do a whiteboard episode where we're just going to riff a little bit on finding the constraints in your business. I know we've done a lot of content around moving the needle and solving certain problems, how to get better at closing, sales, marketing, etc. But first step is identifying where the constraint is that we might need to overcome in our business. So there's a lot of parallels to fitness. I know, Tiger, you were sharing some examples for personal training, delivering programs.
When we're looking at like the framework here, we have our input, which is, the thing that we're doing, the stimulus we're going to apply, usually to a problem of some sort or something we're trying to solve. We have our skill, right, which is how good we are at the thing that we're doing, or how good we are at our input. And then we have the output, which is like the result, right? So it's kind of like running an experiment. Something that we should all be familiar with is, let's say, squatting. So let's say I want my squat max to come up. So my input might be, instead of squatting 1 day a week, I'm going to jump it all the way up to 3 times a week. So I'm spending 3 days a week squatting. That's my input. My skill on that is a whole multitude of things. It's like, okay, am I actually squatting 3 times a week, or am I doing 2 and saying I'm doing 3? What's the quality of my squat? What percentages am I doing? Am I approaching each squat with like a massive level of intention, or am I just kind of going through the motions, right? Those are your skills. And then the output, obviously, is a result you get out of that. Okay, the cool part about this is that once you go through and apply this thing and you look at your skill and you overview how you did there, and then you see the output that you gained, you can decide whether or not that was a worthwhile input, right? So if my squat doesn't go up, do I still want to squat 3 times a week? Maybe not. It kind of depends. What was my squats, or like, were my squats good the whole time? Because if I was doing a good job squatting and my squats still didn't go up, then maybe I need to do twice a week. So you would want to change your input.
Yep, great parallel. So bringing it back to business, right? Our inputs, right, to use your analogy, right, is essentially our volume, right? How much we're working, right? If we look at this as skill and will, okay, that's how much we're putting into the system. Then our skill is the amount of leverage, right, we get on that system, right? How much we're getting out of each squat. Someone that's a lot more technically efficient, or just has better motor recruitment, whatever, getting lost in the weeds, right? They're going to get more leverage and more ROI out of each input into the system. Okay, So bringing it back to the business of personal training and fitness, we have 3 primary input categories, if you will. We might break down some of these a little bit today. So we have our contacts, right? The amount of new potential leads, new business opportunities coming into our system. We have our consults, the people that we're actually meeting with and giving an invitation to come on as clients with us. And then we have our clients, okay? So based on the amount of contacts that we have in the system, we're going to have X number of consults that show up. Our skill there is what we call the contact to appointment show ratio. Sometimes people break that up into just contact to appointment and appointment to show, right? So let's put together an example, Tiger. What is let's say an average amount of contacts that we see a trainer put in a week?
Let's say like a brand new trainer or someone like kind of in their first 6 months, at least 10 a day. So let's say 50.
Okay, so 1 or 10 for every weekday. So 50 contacts, okay? And out of that, they're going to book and see how many consultations would you say?
I would say somebody that's new at training is going to be a lower percentage. Let's say 20%.
Okay, so they're getting less leverage per unit of volume, right? I hope this makes sense, right? So they're seeing, you said 10 consults will show, right? 20%, okay? This is our contact to appointment show or contact to consult ratio, okay? So we now have a system that we can analyze. Do we have a skill issue where we're not getting enough leverage, or do we have a volume issue where we're not just putting enough input into the system, okay? So once we have our consults, great. We've met with 10 people. Hopefully we've given all of them the invite to come into our program, right? So we've had 10 consults, okay? Out of those, what would we say an average brand new trainer that hasn't watched any of our videos?
Somebody that doesn't know who we are.
What are they gonna convert?
Maybe like 1. Maybe okay. 1. Maybe 1 out of 10.
And we're lowballing them. All right, so they got 1 new client, okay, from these 10 consults. That would be a 10% conversion rate.
Hey, 1 client a week, if you keep this going, is actually pretty good. You'll be at 52 by the end of the year.
It's not that hard to be successful. That's what we're bringing down to. As long as there's enough volume being put into the system. When in doubt, do more volume, right? Yeah. Over time, you're also going to get better with that as a strategy. But that said, we know now 10%, that's a metric that we can track and measurably improve in order to build confidence, which will ideally help us seek more opportunity, or at least motivate us maybe to seek more opportunity. Okay, so this is our new clients, and that gets added into our total client bucket, let's say. Okay, so let's say that we have 30 clients. Okay, and we have a few different skill ratios, right? This is just broad level in each of these categories, but for clients to our results, okay, we have a few different skill ratios here. One is going to be our compliance rate. How well we do at getting these 30 clients to actually show up and not miss workouts and deliver training sessions, right? Deliver workouts. How well we do at retaining these clients, right? And delivering results. Because we know in this industry, right, it's commensurate with the same experience for our clients, right? We only get paid and we only make an impact if we deliver results. The more impact we make, the more income we generate for ourselves, and the greater impact, of course, we make in our clients' lives too, right? So what would we say some good metrics to shoot for as far as like a month-over-month retention? What can a trainer look to expect, or where would be like the red flags, right? When you're coaching a brand new trainer and you're like, man, this is our problem that we have to focus on.
So we're usually looking for a 5% churn rate. So, I mean, ideally a 0% churn rate, right? But a 5% churn would mean they're going to lose 5% of their clients month over month.
Yep, a 5% or less, what we would call churn percentage, right? So in that case, that would be 1 to 2 clients we would probably expect to lose, right, per month. So we would need to make sure, if we're looking up the system, that we're figuring out how we can add either more into the program, right, by either having more volume or more leverage, or we better be figuring out how to lose no clients, right? Because in this case, not enough is coming in on the front end, okay? So this little matrix, if you will, this framework will help us kind of identify where the problems are, right? It helps lays out the math, if you will. Okay, a framework that I like to go through to identify problems further, right, is to ask myself, okay, looking at this, what is the problem? Okay, so if you remember the acronym PIO, problem, investigate, overcome. What is the problem? Okay, in this case, for this scenario, right, the issue is that we're not converting enough, right, and potentially, right, so we're going to have to work on the skill deficiency, and we also might need to put more volume in on the front end, right, in order to get more practice or to make up for this deficiency in the short term. We want to investigate, right? When we look at why this system may not be working to the degree that we'd like it to be, is it a character trait, is it a skill, or is it a belief issue, right? All of those are going to contribute. And then last, when we look at overcoming the issues in order to have greater output, okay, what we want to look at is, what is our stimulus? What are we going to do by when? How are we going to measure that stimulus as far as ROI? And then lastly, how are we going to redirect once we assess this again in a 30-day time period, a 2-week time period?
And I think Andy kind of skipped over something that I think we should draw a little more emphasis on there too. If you're in this situation, or you're in a situation similar and you're assessing this, and you realize that you have a skill issue when it comes to conversion, the answer is temporarily to chase volume, right? So it's like, okay, you just need to do more action short term, right, until you get better at closing. A lot of people, what they'll do is they get discouraged by this 10% number, and they're like, you know what? I'm just going to start looking for the best possible options. I'm going to look for clients that are wanting to sign up rather than these other people who don't want to sign up. And so what happens is their contacts comes way down. They end up seeing less consultations, and they still close at 10%. Okay, but instead of them getting 10 consults a week, they're getting 5, right? Yep. So now it takes 2 weeks to get a client versus 1 week to get a client.
We don't want there to be ever one bottleneck that breaks the system, right? So for instance, in this person's scenario, just because they're not converting maybe as high as they'd like to, doesn't mean that we should just throw out the whole system.
Sacrifice the contacts, no more contacts.
Right? Right. It's like if, let's say, Shaquille O'Neal had the goal of being the point leader, right, at the end of the season. The guy can't make free throws. He knows that he can't be the scoring champion by just shooting free throws, right? Mm-hmm. He just has to shoot more shots and get down in the lane more if his goal is to score more points. Same thing for personal training. It's always a volume game. If we leave enough volume coming into the system, we're always going to get more output, okay? But along the way, if we can also increase our skill percentages, that's what's going to separate those that are good and kind of run average personal training careers and those that truly lead exceptional personal training careers.
And I think that Alex Hormozi quote, which I'm sure we've said on the podcast before and we haven't, but the idea that you build confidence by building like an overwhelming stack of essentially like small actions that you've done in the past. And it's like, if you want your skills to get better, it's just by massively hitting volume. It's not necessarily sitting down and practicing or watching a ton of random YouTube videos. A lot of the times it's just chasing the volume, and you're slowly going to get better as you begin to understand what's working for people and what's not working for people.
Yep, 100%. Hope this framework was helpful for you guys. It's something that we use all the time to identify problems and then look for opportunities for growth. Thanks, guys.